I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hi, welcome to Amazing FBA. This is your host, Michael Veazey speaking, and this podcast episode is brought to you by Reliable Income, led by Adam Hudson. Reliable Income is an Amazon community and course, and Adam Hudson is an Amazon seller. He's doing well over 7 figures a year now, and also a very straightforward Australian. And in a sea of hyper Americans, that is quite a refreshing change. Adam will tell you it straight when it comes to how much money you need to private label, which is measured in the thousands of dollars these days, not the hundreds, and how long it takes to really get a private label product off the ground when you're working alongside the day job, which again is measured in months rather than weeks. Now, alongside that, Adam, however, is a very, very positive guy, and he has a lot to offer in terms of getting a really great positioning on Amazon for your product. So high quality products selling at a really good price and keeping the competition at bay, which it's never been a smarter time to adopt that strategy than in 2018, when Me Too or Cheap are just going to be trashed by the Amazon crowd or have their price disappear into the floor overnight. So I really, really think his approach is sustainable. Hence, I think that Reliable Income is a very good word for his type of training. If you want to find out more about Adam, as I said, amazingfba.com/Adam. If you want to find out more about his training and or take the 4-part video training course, which is free, go to amazingfba.com/reliable, RELIABLE. Just for more transparency, I am an affiliate of that, so that will buy more than a coffee, as is the traditional affiliate sales. But what it will do is help cover some of the costs of running the podcast, which hopefully benefits you. Some of the software that I have to use to keep in touch with the guests, and my beloved and long-suffering editor, Daniel, who is worth his weight in gold, but I have got to pay him because even editors have to eat as well. So I've got to pay for blogging, podcast hosting, the rest of it. So that helps to cover some of my costs there. And I hope you'll check that out. Now on with the show. Hi there, and welcome back to Amazing FBA. I've got a little shocking factoid for you about Amazon. 98% of Amazon businesses, or rather Amazon accounts that are opened, are either closed or inactive within a year of being opened. 98%, folks. I don't know what that tells you, but it certainly ties in with some things that I have experienced. And I just want to share a couple of stories with you about a couple of people who've come to me for mentoring, which I've offered for about 18 months, a little bit more now. April 2016 is when I started offering that. And I've had some fantastic mentoring students who've had some great successes. Equally, I've had some people who have not done so well. So I do my best these days to try and weed people out up front so that I don't waste their time and above all their money. Well, actually their time more than anything else. Opportunity cost is a real cost. So a couple of stories. The first person that came to me, I simply asked the question on the application form. And if you want to check it out, just look at amazingfba.com/mentoring, MEN for November, TORING. And, I ask how much money you can put into Amazon business for inventory. And my minimum is normally at least £3,000. If you want to be in a mastermind, about £5,000 if you're going to work with me one-to-one. Really, that is a minimum as well. It's not a recommended amount. But anyway, so I was one guy, and he wrote something very strange on the form, like £500 or something. And I thought, well, I don't quite understand this, but we booked in a chat anyway. So I thought, well, I need to have a little chat to this guy and find out what's going on. And which is the second stage in the application. So it's a conversation, an interview, really. And we had a chat. And I said, so tell me about this number. And he said, well, so I've only got about £500 myself, but I'm going to borrow the rest from my uncle. And at that point, I just said, well, okay, stop there. Now, there are people who have started this business with credit card debt. And famously, Anthony Lee is one of those who I've interviewed for the podcast, and we'll probably have on again if he'll come back. And no, he's a great success and an example of how it can be done. But I think that's the exception to the rule. I think borrowing a lot of money up front is high risk that you're adding, and it adds to the probability of business failure as well, because you've got to service the debt with paying interest, etc. Now, that's a personal decision, right? I'm not there to judge anyone who should or shouldn't do it that way, but I'm not comfortable with encouraging people to do that. So I just said no to that person, which is a reminder that you need money to do this job if you're going to do private labeling. And I said, well, what I'd suggest is that, I can't work with you because I'm not comfortable with that, but you could start with retail arbitrage or online arbitrage. So that was a pretty straightforward thing. So one of the things you need to be an Amazon entrepreneur these days is a certain amount of money. I would suggest it's capital rather than debt. Nothing wrong with using debt once you've got an existing business and product to sell. Yeah, great. Go and borrow some money short term if you want to enable you to get through Q4 and the pre-Christmas period. So that's the first thing. Now, the most interesting thing that strikes me, apart from the running out of money or not having enough money and realizing it halfway through, which I think must apply to a lot of people, is actually the mindset, which I suspect is the actual ultimate differentiator. Because after all, people can earn money, but changing a mindset can be done, but it's quite hard to do. One lady in the same week as it happens, quite a while ago, approached me for mentoring and, ticked all the boxes on the form. So we had a conversation and, she'd had some training, had a little bit of, quite a bit of experience actually digging around on research, but hadn't actually bought anything or sold anything, made any turnover. And after about 45 minutes, which is longer than I normally spend, she said, well, so look, can you guarantee me £1,000 a month income within 6 months? Which, in a sense, is a reasonable question. And in another sense, is not. And here's why. I said to her, no, I can't guarantee that. I could give you money back from my personal, coaching if you want, but I can't guarantee you an income from Amazon. It may be a lot lower than that. It may be a lot higher than that. One thing that is very hard to do is to guarantee an amount, but I said it's not about guarantees. Because I said the reason I can't work with you is it's not the right mentality, and that might be taken as disrespectful. And I'd like to say that if that's how you feel, or if you know somebody like that, I don't think it's disrespectful. I mean, some people are just more risk averse than others, and that's okay. A lot of people shouldn't be trying to be entrepreneurs because they need a situation which reduces risk. And the reduced risk of a day job, with a proper employment contract, is a lot lower than Amazon. And we talked in other podcasts recently about the fact that you're going to get a lot of disappointment in that situation, because a lot of things that make businesses exciting and are things like being scalable, being sellable, and scalable is a fancy word for you can sell 100 times as much stuff without you working 100 times as many hours. And Amazon is all of those things, but it is not risk-free. And I think that one of the most important things I can say is, and it goes beyond just the £1,000 a month guarantee idea, is that life doesn't come with a guarantee anyway. Now, that's really obvious when you're an entrepreneur because you're at the sharp end of moving markets, but I think that's just true anyway. Some people are not so equipped to take obvious risk. If you ask me, the underlying reality is that if you're in a shrinking market, the business you're part of is going to die, and whether you've had a job there for 25 years or you own that business outright, you're at risk. Now, most people don't want to think about that, so they like to think of a day job as semi-permanent. In the UK, I predict we're going to be entering some really turbulent times, and what looked like a permanent job for a long time is not going to be permanent. Just as, for example, if you've lived in London for a long time or the southeast of England, what looked like so-called permanent growth of property prices and values is not going to continue. And certainly the rest of England and Wales especially is just dropping in value or very, very static. So what has gone up for a long time isn't necessarily going to keep going up. You need to look at the trends. And that's another truth where I think Amazon scores pretty big. The overwhelming trend is, well, there are two things for British-based people. The first overwhelming trend for everybody is that online retail is growing, roughly speaking, at 20% per year in the USA, somewhat lower in the UK. We've already had that adoption. Probably similar in Germany. I don't know the exact figures, hard to get. And there is still a huge way to go. So we are part of a growing trend. If you are working in a brick and mortar store like British Home Stores, which closed down a while ago, famously there was a lot of hoo-ha about the owner taking dividends out of it instead of paying the pensions. But sooner or later, the pensions are going to kill a lot of companies as well, because everyone's living much longer than was predicted by the actuaries, the guy who create pensions. Right now, I'm not going to discuss the rights and wrongs of it, but the fact is, economically, it's a bit of a grim thing for a business to survive. Woolworths went to the wall as well because it was selling cheap stuff on the high street. And of course, on the high street, you've got high overhead, you've got staffing costs, all of the stuff that Amazon reduces a great deal, or indeed any other e-commerce business. So economics of it, basically, Amazon is part of a trend, which if you have the courage, you can be part of. The other thing to think about is this: if you are a risk averse person, you do not, if you're British, want to be linked only to the British economy. If you are letting property, the government is going to take more and more of the money that you take. You're not going to get a tax relief on the mortgage interest. They're going to wind that down over the next 4 years. Property prices are likely to be static. And just generally, the economy is like to suffer all the things that come from Brexit, which for anyone who was looking ahead, and forgive me being political, but I think there's economically just simply, it's just a fact that Brexit is a terrible idea for the British economy and will continue to be. If you disagree, then you're welcome to come and argue in the Facebook group if you want, but you're going to have to work hard because the pound has dropped like a stone. We are net importers, therefore we're going to have inflation. Probably we'll have higher interest rates, etc. Now, this all sounds like doom and gloom music, but the great shining light for anyone who has got what it takes, I was going to say the cojones, I guess, is the closest I can get to it, the courage to sell on Amazon and risk adding that as an income stream. I'm not even saying give up the day job, but risk adding some, risk a small amount of money relative to, the upside it's going to be, but it might be substantial for you. A few £1,000s may not be chicken feed to you, but risk that and some time. And what you do is you get to access a growing trend as opposed to a shrinking one globally. And if you're British, you can access the US market where the dollar is very strong against the pound and it's a thriving economy. It's going to hit its troubles. I know politically it's a troubled place right now, but it's a big thriving place. It's not going away overnight. And you can sell into the Eurozone, which is a place which, the pound is heading for parity with the euro, but their prices haven't really changed. So in other words, if you sell stuff from Britain, you can sell into the Eurozone for simply higher price than you can sell it in the UK and Germany specifically. It's a fussier place to sell. You need to be willing to deal with German translations and a foreign language and a bit of customer service in a foreign language. Actually, that's not that hard to deal with. I say that, I suppose, a bit more sanguine about it than some because I happen to speak German, but you can outsource this stuff. And I will be interviewing people very soon for the podcast. It may have already come out about, how that can work and how to use translation and customer service to open up Europe to yourself. But just to put it simply, if you have the courage to overcome what is a genuine risk, it's starting a business on a relatively volatile market, but you learn how to do it properly. It exposes you to different currencies and you can actually just gather dollars and stay out of the pound dollar relationship, which is what I've done. I mean, my business owns, it's probably, I don't know how much cash we've got in the dollar account at the moment because I haven't looked recently, but it's over $10,000 in cash and probably a few £100 because I'm not that interested in pounds. I want to earn in dollars because I buy in dollars from China. So I can just stay out of the British economy entirely, which is a great relief. So in conclusion, this mindset stuff, I mean, it's really, this is just one little example. There are multiple ways you could look at mindset for entrepreneurs, but this is an interesting one because what I conclude is this: if you are risk averse to a really large degree, the irony is you probably are exposed to risks anyway, but you're just running away from them rather than assessing them objectively, knowing roughly how big a risk is versus the reward, and then making an objective decision. Now, if you've made a proper decision about the true risk of keeping what you think is a solid job in the UK versus risking getting onto Amazon, learning your craft, making some mistakes, maybe losing a bit of money, but then learning how to sell into the USA and have access to international markets from your laptop in your kitchen table or in your living room. Once you've learned that skill set and you know what you're doing, that actually, I think, reduces the risk of being dependent on one economy where the writing is frankly on the wall. We're not going to become Greece overnight, but it's not going to be pretty. Britain has a history of self-destructing occasionally in the 1970s, which I grew up, I was too small to really be aware of it. But, coming into the 80s, where opposite extremes happened. But I mean, it was known as the sick man of Europe. We had strikes crippling the place. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, actually had to bail Britain out. I'm not saying all of that drama is going to be recreated in the same style, but I do think that if you're risk averse, but you're thinking clearly, I do think that one of the biggest risks you can have is to have one income source, like a day job, which if you keep it, it's fine. But if you lose it, it's gone. And then you've got a trauma of trying to find work when likely other people in your industry are also looking for work. So that's going to be hard. And the other thing is depending on one economy. I just don't think that makes sense. And particularly if you're going to depend on one economy, it should be a strong one. The USA or Germany would be places I'd be comfortable to depend on. The UK, frankly, is not. So in conclusion, if you're really, really risk averse, then I think you're missing the point, frankly. If you are, however, not made to be an entrepreneur, that's fine. You don't have to be. Not everyone's going to be cut out for it. In fact, most people aren't. I have some aspects of entrepreneurship. Apart from anything else, as somebody put it to me a while ago, I'm unemployable. I have to be either freelance or building a business. And I enjoy the process. I'm not going to go back on that way of life now. It's just too liberating, too cool, too fun, you know? And I can say that hand on heart. So I would encourage you to at least add a second income stream if you have a day job. Maybe you don't want to plunge in with both feet into Amazon FBA. That's fine. You don't need to give up the day job anyway. When you're building a new business, I don't think it's even advisable. But what you can do is add an extra income stream and start to get some income from outside the UK. And if you are, just a final note, if you're an Amazon seller and established in the UK, great. But I would just encourage you to look the 30 whole miles across the continent to continental Europe. And France is obviously the closest geographically, but in terms of markets, it's overwhelmingly about Germany as a whole. Now, individual products like watches and fashion items sell well in Italy. Apparently, I know a couple of people doing really well in those spaces in those markets. And, you know, I even know somebody who said that tablecloths sold really well in Spain compared to anywhere else in Europe, including the UK. But those, I think, are the exceptions that prove the rule. So if you are already an Amazon seller in the UK, don't be so risk averse. Don't have the mindset of, I'm not going to go into Germany unless I can get this, that, and the other. That's chicken and egg. I mean, you've got to break that cycle somewhere. If you want the heat from the fire, as they say, you've got to get the wood and set fire to it. And so if you want some income from Germany and you're worried about whether or not that will work out, then I would advise you get over the worry, get yourself over there, go through the pain, the hassle. It's not that much. It's only Germany. It's not like Japan where everything's in a completely different language and a different culture and long way away from the UK. Just risk it, take small risks, learn from it, keep building, and you will get somewhere. So a slightly rambling thoughts that resulted from thinking about that little experience that I had with that client. And I wish her well. It's not a judgment, but I really think, you know, the world is dividing between those who are online and are getting how the modern economy works and those who don't. And those who don't will be somewhat screwed. And those who get it can, if they work really hard and are smart and get smart advice, can win big. And I really don't even think it's necessarily a good thing that it's like that. I just think that's how it is. So if you're willing to embrace that new reality, then come and join us, amazingfba.com/FBF as in face, B as in book. And if you're really, really wanting to plunge in there and embrace it, then come and join us at the mastermind with like-minded people. If you're doing over 10K a month in dollars, but preferably in pounds and actually as a minimum, then you can be considered for membership of the 10K Collective. We meet once a month, normally on Wednesdays in central London. Check that out at the blog, amazingfba.com/mastermind. And if you are in the very early stages, you could join the Zero to Hero Mastermind as well. And of course, you're welcome to apply for mentoring. Just know that I won't work with you unless I think you can win. So I hope that helps. Thanks for listening.